The onset of the winter season marks the beginning of the initiation season in some provinces. It's a period when boys go through traditional African rites of passage as part of their journey to becoming men. Now, during lockdown level 1, Western Cape MEC for Cultural Affairs, Anroux Marais, gave the go-ahead for the winter initiation season to start, in fact, from the 1st of June, which was yesterday. But an advisory issued by the Provincial Health Department has called for the postponement of the winter initiation season. So what will be the impact of this postponement, and when can parents of initiates expect the suspension to be lifted? Let's unpack the story for you now with our guests joining us this morning. Western Cape Cultural Affairs MEC Anroux Marais, and also joining us is Contralesa General Secretary Zolani Mkiva. As we continue to unpack this development, I want to begin with you, Anroux, this morning. A very good morning to both of our guests once again. So at this stage, is it still an advisory to postpone the initiation season?
Good morning, Michelle. Good morning, Zolani. Yes, it's still advisory from our Department of Health. As we know, we are in an established resurgence of cases, and due to the expected third wave occurring over the period of which initiation under alert level 1 has been approved, the Western Cape Health Department, in the interest of safety of all and as a precautionary measure, has issued an advisory recommending a delay until the end of the third wave in the Western Cape.
Zolani, your response to that?
No, thank you very much. Good morning to the MEC and good morning to you as well as the viewers. Thank you for having us. I don't think it's surprising, as it were, because it has been anticipated that we may have a third wave. Mm-hmm. The only thing that needs to happen is that now that there is an advisory, I will further advise the MEC to perhaps meet with the structures that are responsible for initiation in the province, particularly the traditional leadership. We can start off with the provincial structure of Contralesa in that province, as well as interface with the Khoisan Council as well on the ground, but also go to areas which are designated for these rites of passage where they are conducted, to meet with surgeons, traditional nurses, so that this advisory can be communicated at large. The other worrying factor is that since the office of the MEC had already given notice that the initiation will take place in the Western Cape, I do know that quite a number of boys have already gone through the actual initiation as from yesterday. In fact, others went through during the course of the weekend when I heard from my structures on the ground there. So what I think would be required is the necessary support to be given there to ensure that there is adherence. Government gives support to ensure that there's adherence to all the protocols that are expected in that respect. Yeah. Otherwise, I think it's a good thing that the advisory is being communicated. It just needs now to be consulted with all the relevant structures, as I have communicated. I don't think there is an issue for us to fight over this. We just have to join hands and work as leaders to ensure that nothing is taken as a decision unilateral without taking particularly the custodians of the custom into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a difficult situation, wasn't it? Because the President's address would have come at a time, as you say, Zolani, when initiates were already making their own arrangements and indeed embarking on their journeys for the winter initiation season. Anroux, in terms of, communicating this advisory, being in consultation with traditional leaders, with surgeons, with traditional nurses, has that taken place, or is it something that is still ongoing, given the kind of short notice? It was meant to start yesterday.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Zolani, for your input. We did communicate this with all the stakeholders at a meeting held with the initiation forums on the 27th of March, but we will monitor the situation, and we also did a very in-depth discussion with the traditional leaders who are the custodians of the practice, and we also regularly engage with the Provincial Initiation Coordinating Committee, as well as the Initiation Reference Committee, a subcommittee of our Culture Commission, and all our initiation forums. And the cooperation was critical and is critical as it paved the way for the formulation of a roadmap towards a safe rite of passage. And the central principle of this program, as well as the development of the risk adjustment plan for the initiation practice under COVID-19 conditions. And I must say, I do understand, and we all do understand the frustration, because there's a backlog of initiates now. But we will monitor it, and we will definitely keep everyone on board, and won't do it in a silo. We never do it without our initiation forums.
I want to talk to you, Zolani, about the impact on this rite of passage. This is not the first time we've seen a postponement of the initiation season, and it affects a generation of young men. You know, are we understanding yet what it means for them?
It is an unprecedented situation for our country, particularly starting from 2020, where we had a universal suspension or cancellation of the initiation season. It has created a huge backlog which we have never had in time. So it is going to be a very, very big challenge, particularly that, initiation season also go currently with the holidays, school holidays for June as well as for December. So what we want to negotiate with government is that, given the fact that the June holidays were themselves quite shortened, that let's look at a longer December holiday to allow a situation wherein a number of these hundreds of thousands of boys can go through during the December. But of course, everything needs to happen, with a proper plan in place and necessary support by government. There will be a need for extraordinary intervention on the part of government to assist with resources in this regard, so that we can prevent any calamities and fatalities from occurring, given the fact that we'll be dealing with extraordinary numbers from the numbers that we are used to.
Yeah.
So it is really it is having a very bad and a negative impact, because some young boys take this in a manner that is very religious. So if it doesn't happen at a time when they had anticipated for it to happen, others are even thinking of committing suicide. So we need that support from the institutions of state, so that we can also provide extraordinary measures like counseling and so on, so that we prevent that. So it is important, therefore, that we act with absolute responsibility in the manner in which all these things are also communicated, and as to who should actually first do the public pronouncement insofar as this is concerned, so that it is not seen to be undermining what is expected by the boys themselves, but also by the community. It is very important that we communicate responsible, so that at a time when that communique goes out, it is well received and the groundwork had already been done by the structures on the ground.
Anroux, in terms of what Zolani has just outlined, the massive government intervention that will no doubt be needed, not only given the sheer number of boys that are lagging behind in many respects in terms of the initiation season, but also undertaking such a mammoth task in the midst of COVID-19. What kind of support is government able to give?
Thank you, Michelle. You know what we will definitely do? We have an initiation risk adjustment plan, which we put together, as I said, with all the initiation forums, and it will be submitted to the national department, and especially to Cocktail, to give us the go-ahead with all the safety protocols adhered to. And I must say, I really think our initiation forums are in the Western Cape are ready for starting and commencing. But with this COVID third wave, we're very precautious of this, but we remain committed to our proactive approach as the department continues to equip culture practitioners and members of the initiation forums with the necessary training to be ready to resume the sacred practice of initiation as soon as it is approved.
All right, so those discussions are no doubt ongoing. Zolani, I want to just end off with you, and you touched on this a little earlier. You know, aside from the logistical impact of postponing the initiation season once again, the impact mentally on these young men. Just tell us more about, you know, how you reckon they will be feeling and what kind of support will be given to them.
I think the kind of support that is required to avert any calamities in this regard is for continuous engagement and continuous communication. And I think even in schools, there has to be time that is given, especially to the boys, so that they are spoken to in a manner that is very constructive by relevant people, and there must be traditional leaders that are involved in that engagement. And the extra support that would require from the government will relate to issues that are like PPE, but also some equipment which gets used, as well as food. There may be a need this time around because families could not plan well and some families have lost income. So we may need in the initiation school support more than just the issues that are related to PPE, but also to catering and so on and so forth, but also to medicines. There may be a need for medicines. There may be a need for tools of trade that relate to testing, pre-testing, and all of those things that are related to that. Those equipment must be made available so that it is not only the initiates to be that gets tested, but it must also be the surgeons. It must also be traditional nurses. Everybody must go through that exercise. So it needs more than just the custodian at the center of it, but we need the Department of Health. We need the MEC's office and the minister in the department that is responsible for cultural affairs in that province. All hands must be on the deck, and we must work as a collective to ensure that at the end of the day, when those boys graduate, all of them come back home healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. To both of our guests, thank you so much for your time this morning on the AM report. Zolani Mkiva is Contralesa's General Secretary, and of course Anroux Marais is the Western Cape's Cultural Affairs MEC. The winter initiation season in the province postponed due to lockdown level 2. Thanks very much for your time indeed.